don't hit the contract price, you will not see business from that client again.
Ooh.
So it's tough to get an appraisal of integrity through all those hoops to get to the consumer we cannot talk to, essentially. So the setup from top tier just is not set up for the consumer.
Welcome to season 3 of the Real Estate Replay. How we've made it this far without the real estate industry telling us to stop talking, I don't know. This season, we're not only sharing seller and buyer horror stories, but we're also helping to expose how this industry works and how all of these companies are making money off of you. It's all the things this industry doesn't want you to know, but we would like you to know to better protect yourself when buying and selling a home. This story is titled, "The Appraisal Came In at $100,000 Under." Goes on to say they are a first-time home buyer, offer accepted, inspection went great, but the appraisal came back $100,000 below the price. They're working on getting another appraisal as they believe the first one was incredibly low. They went on to say how this home is in a top-notch neighborhood. Problem, they say, is that the comps are being used from 5 minutes southwest, which if you live in their state, you know can make a world of difference. So they offered $595. It came in at $495. They also mentioned the home has been sitting on the market for 120 days, which usually is a flag that maybe it could be overpriced, but this person is adamant that the appraiser was wrong. I wanted to use this story and bring in someone who is an expert about this because I feel like appraisals are the boogeyman of the real estate industry because we do not see you, we do not talk to you, we do not know who you are, but you are giving the value of the home we're buying and it kind of can make or break the deal. So to help me dissect this home that's been on the market for 120 days, I have Daisy Glassburn with me, who has been in the appraisal business since the late 1990s. She has her own firm now, but she's worked in various capacities in the industry, including conducting forensic reviews, which was forcing banks to buy back loans previously sold to Fannie and Freddie in 2008. She also serves as a hearing officer for various counties when owners appeal their assessments, and she's seen quite a bit in her industry and is among the minority of appraisers who's retained integrity in the profession and is currently working to enact change to empower appraisers to better protect consumers. So thank you, Daisy, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to talk about this stuff because this is something that we don't ever really hear about as a buyer, right? Like you kind of are the person we know about. We know you're coming, but we don't know who you are. We probably don't understand exactly what you're doing, how you got that number. So I think it's super important that we have these conversations so that home buyers understand what's happening, good and bad, in the world of appraisals. So thank you. I think we should start from the very, very beginning. So like, what is an appraiser? What do they do?
The intent is to provide an unbiased, objective opinion about the value of the home. Everyone else in the transaction has some degree of an emotional attachment to the transaction going through. So that's the intent, and to protect the public trust from all of those forces.
So here's what I don't understand. The certification process to become an appraiser is way different than a real estate agent. Yet a real estate agent is telling everybody what to price their home at, what to offer for a home. So what could you explain to everybody what the certification process is to become an appraiser?
It has changed over the years, and for a while you needed a bachelor's degree, and they found that appraisers were not entering the profession with that.
Okay.
So they've shifted to an associate's degree or various substitutions of that, but there's college and 300 hours of qualifying education. And then after that, working underneath a tenured appraiser for 3,000 hours.
Wait, 3,000. Wow. Okay.
And that's the hardest part and the trickiest decision for a new appraiser, because just like there are bad agents, there are bad appraisers to be trained by. So.
And if you're spending 3,000 hours with them, do you get Do you get paid under that 3,000 hours? Is it like a training
So
system or?
it depends on the appraiser, the individual appraiser's agreement with the trainee. I was somewhat lucky when I got into it. My stepdad at the time was an appraiser, so yes, I did get paid for it. I know that a lot of appraisers in training your competition, essentially, it's more of a benefit to the trainee. So there's just various deals that everyone works out. So
Okay. I find it baffling because in some states you have like a 60-hour course and then you take a test and you can be licensed to sell a home or buy a home. But then like to have the loans certified, you have this very qualified person to put the value on a home. And I was like, well, wait a minute, like why are banks like very well protected in this situation? But as consumers, we're kind of like just kind of going at someone's impression, and I'm sure as real estate agents, I don't want this to come out wrong. Like the more years you do it, I'm sure the better you might get at it. But for a newer agent, it's just baffling to me that we get someone to tell us what to price, what to offer, but they don't have the certification that you do, who actually decides the price and the value and stuff like that. So it just seems unbalanced. Maybe that's, I don't know, I'm probably going to make a lot of real estate agents mad. And I don't mean to say it that way, but it's just interesting that the banks have a much qualifying person to tell them pricing, right?
right. Well, as I'm sure you know, the NAR is huge, a huge group and structure and foundation for new and older agents. And they are a force to be reckoned with. And very organized in the government presence and legislature that comes through. It's a support group too for the agents, and I think that they benefit from that in terms of training and education. But at the end of the day, they are the salesmen of the industry. As far as experience, it varies widely with realtors, as it does appraisers. A lot of appraisers work solo, and we don't interact with each other near as much as realtors do. And I think that was downfall for our industry and our profession. It's made us also easy targets. Yeah.
Right. You're almost like the boogeyman because you're the last piece, right? Kind of before they close. And then you either are coming up with more money or the home seller's mad at you because it's valued way higher than what this person's offering. So I feel like you likely get a lot of blame, and it doesn't seem fair because I feel like there's a lot of people involved in getting you to that price and should have set some expectations of what might happen.
Well, I love realtors who price right. That saves the consumer so much time and headache if they simply do that. When the seller is upset with the appraised value, most of the time the buyer is as well. Even though if the appraisal is done correctly, it's protecting them and all of the public in general. The forces around appraisers that are set up to appear that it's unbiased it's very elusive because an appraiser can do an accurate appraisal. And by the way, I spend an average of 8 to 10 hours per appraisal.
Oh, wow.
You come up with the analysis and dissect every little detail in the sales that I'm using. But when you send that to your client, the lender, or in most cases, an AMC, which is a whole other topic, they're appraisal management companies.
Okay.
Essentially. But if you don't hit the contract price, you will not see business from that client again. Ooh. So it's tough to get an appraisal of integrity through all those hoops to get to the consumer we cannot talk to, essentially. So the setup from top tier just is not set up for the consumer.
Right. So AMC. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the lender is going to AMC and AMC finds an appraiser.
Correct. Right? In most cases, there are, after the 2008 crash, HVCC and the Dodd-Frank Act was put into place to essentially, hopefully the sincere intention was to remove pressure on the appraiser to provide an unbiased opinion to the consumer without the pressure of the lenders and brokers and realtors. However, it did quite the opposite. The AMC model dipped into the pockets of appraisers to get a cut of everything, overcharge the consumer for the appraisal.
Oh man.
And they have skin in the game at that point too, as for the deals to go through. So the pressure was never taken away. And essentially appraisers were further muzzled to produce a clear, concise, based on fact.
I want to know this then. If there's like a middleman, which is shocking because like the whole industry is filled with middlemen, it's disgusting. I want to know this. So the lender goes to this company and the company gets an appraiser. So this company is essentially picking the appraiser for your home, right? If they use that group.
Correct.
So what we get charged as a consumer, how much of that do you actually get?
It's hidden from us in a lot of ways, with a lot of different AMC models. I know it's at a minimum, they pull 100 to several hundred out of the total fee for them.
Oh.
So my standard fee right now in the Denver market is $650 to $700 for a standard appraisal. So the AMC, I have seen them charge, and again, we sign our lives away with these AMCs to not ever disclose fee details.
Shocking. That sounds familiar. That's like the whole industry. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So, but I've seen them charge $1,000, so the variables range, and it's damning to the consumer and of course to the appraiser as well.
Right.
But yeah, there's hidden fees throughout the whole process. And again, once you don't hit the contract price, that client won't hear from again. The way that they assign typically appraisers to various assignments is sending out blast emails to probably every appraiser within, a certain mile radius and to get bids.
Oh.
And so it's really downgraded the quality.
Right.
Sure.
So do they just pick who's the cheapest?
Yes. They only pick who's the cheapest.
Wow.
For sure.
And then put a markup on it and then give the lender that number. And that's what we end up seeing on our closing documents.
And a lot of appraisers got into the industry initially because you hear rumors, it's easy money, it's good money, and I would sad to say a lot of appraisers just do cheap work and just it's a revolving door and they just pump them out, and you can cherry pick comps on the high side as well as you can the low side. So as long as they're hitting that contract price, nobody complains, even though it's not to the benefit ultimately of the consumer.
Right.
So the consumers are emotionally invested in that transaction initially, so they don't want, and it takes a lot to get a deal through. So at that point, they just don't want anything to disrupt it.
Right.
So in my opinion, if it was to be fair to the consumer, an independent appraisal hired by the seller or the buyer or both would be that they would hire the appraiser directly before signing a contract with a real estate agent, before getting their loan approved and getting recommendations for the lenders, for agents that are in their pockets, and get a solid, unhindered, accurate opinion, and then make choices however they want after that.
So are you saying like we should be like, hey, I'm looking at this home, and this home. What do you think?
Yeah. And there's a lot of parameters that appraisers are hindered to even provide that for people. It's set up in a way that if you called me and wanted to get my opinion about, a certain property, whether it's priced right, if I say anything pertaining to value, it's considered an appraisal. And I am subject to all the legalities that surround that and all the standards that are set up not for the appraiser, not for the consumer, but for all of the other people that are involved in the deal that are making money on it. And so it's tough, and we are easily targeted in that scenario. If I gave you my opinion and you told a realtor what my opinion was, the next phone call I would get would be either from that agent or from the state by being turned in. So
but you're like a professional. Why wouldn't I want to ask you your opinion? Wow.
That's why it's tough because I could give you a general idea without doing a full appraisal. But access to the MLS, which I've heard you on some of your TikToks talk about the transparency of data and things on Zillow and Open Door and things like that, realtor.com, and there's a slew of others. But the MLS, it sparked my curiosity by watching your TikToks. What if the MLS itself was made accessible to the public?
Yeah, like a public utility.
How the realtors they would not like that at all.
Right.
But it would provide transparency that you don't get even when they data share with places like Zillow. And there's so many things within the MLS and available searches that anyone could do to gather and make an educated decision yourself.
Right. Essentially the private remarks section, which
private remarks, but you can do searches by square footage, all these things, and do trending data. Also concessions is a big one and has been this past year when things were flying high, and there were people were offering insane things to get just a roof over their head.
Right.
But and now the past 6 months in my market, concessions in the range of $15,000 to $30,000 are common, which is not disclosed to my knowledge in places like Zillow and things like that. And so as appraisers, that is taken off the price of the home. So when you're comparing a home that, let's say, sold for $200,000 but had $10,000 in concessions, it really sold for $190,000 because that buyer was not going to buy that home without that negotiation of those concessions, that amount. So that's something that's not really understood by the public or disclosed.
Right. That's a very good point. I didn't even think about that. Like what we are presented is the very bare bones. Although in a lot of places, I think in Texas and there's a few other, you can't even see what the sale price was. When you look at the property history, it says contact for price. And I'm like, well, that's not like in my state in PA, like I can see what your house sold for. A lot of them pull public records. So I can kind of see like if you bought for sale by owner. But for some states, you can't see any of that. And I didn't even think about concessions and the impact it has on price that you don't see. So that's a very good point.
Don't report the concessions. So if you go to a county's website and try to pull the sale history of the property, you won't see the concessions. So, being able to pull an accurate MLS sheet with all those details and compare apples to apples is really where you get the true value of a property. And you see realtors posting, they can post trends and market analysis in their opinion all day long and not have any ramifications. And my favorite thing is when they talk about the values in a neighborhood. The price does not equal value. And I mean, in tough markets, it rarely does. So there are so many, and with companies like Open Door, Zillow lost their butts on their model with, I call it a Costco model. They buy in volume and their profit is based on, they dump some properties and they overpay for properties. And appraisers are using those as comps. So if you have an unethical appraiser pulling those overpriced properties that were bought by Zillow over market, your contract price is going to come in to value, but you have to analyze each sale and consider, was it an educated buyer that bought that property?
Right.
And so there's so many facets that are not understood or disclosed. And those big companies have made the market a mess.
Yes. Oh my God. Tampa, Lakeland, like that whole Tampa north and a little bit northwest because I would study them. Like I would pull up reports a couple times a year. I did it like 3 or 4 times. I'd pull the whole month and I would see like, what did you buy? What did you sell? And when they were like in their peak, they were selling properties for like 60K more than they bought it for. But then the homes would just sit, like they would sit, even in a hot market, they were still sitting. And then I would catch them like dumping properties to investors on the side. So like they wouldn't even put them back on the market. I think on average during their peak, I mean, it kind of, we all know what happened again, the fall and the winter, but during their peak, it was like 25, 27% to investors. And then about a third to half of those, depending on what month it was, went to investors privately. And so it's like, well, how is this helpful? Like you claim to change the game, but you're not doing any benefit to the home buyer. You're making it worse, in my opinion. Everything I said, I can back up with facts. So if they like to complain to me,
and they're getting better and better at hiding the sales they want to hide.
Yeah.
And they used to pop up on the MLS and they're hiding their name under different, if they hire a broker, then that broker's listed and you don't really see Open Door or whatever company. And you really have to do investigation to find out what the parameters were with those sales, and
right.
They're getting really good at it. So
I noticed I tried to do a report on them in March, or was it February? It was March. And I pulled their sales and they didn't have a single one to an investor in Hillsborough County. And I was like, this feels off. Like you consistently have sold 25, 27, sometimes it was higher than that percentage to investors. But in the past 3 months, you have sold 0, like no tricons, no nothing. And I'm trying to figure out how they did it, unless investors just stopped talking to them, which I highly doubt because it's been years of them selling properties to them. What is the secret? Is there a way to hide that? Or is that just, maybe they changed their mind? I don't know. And the deed records, it used to be so easy. Yeah.
And being that I'm doing appraisals and I'm in the thick of all that information on a daily basis, I can kind of pick up, especially if the pricing is off, whether it's high or low, that is a flag for me to dig deeper. It could be legit, but it's still a data point to look into and confirm. And a lot of agents, especially Open Door, and I don't mean to just pick on Open Door. There's a slew of other companies.
iBuyers in general, correct?
Yeah. And but they will just hide so much of the interactions, and they're impossible to get a hold of. The agents that work with them don't have the information that I need to verify and confirm a valid sale. I mean, I'm sure they have the information, but they're not willing to disclose it. Another thing I wanted to bring up was the days on market. That's another thing that is very embedded even in the MLS, because each MLS service displays it, calculates it differently, which it should be, in my opinion, from the day it's on the market to the day it actually closes, because they go under contract, they get back on, they go under contract falls out. And that's something that it's good information for not only an appraiser, but a consumer to know that it's actually, even though it says it's on the market, it's only been on the market for 5 days, it's really in actuality been on it for 120. My MLS, as soon as an agent marks a listing pending under contract, it stops the days on market count. So whatever is going on, whatever behind the scenes, it could take months. And then if it goes back on, that count starts over. So it's really not an accurate depiction of the property's history.
Right.
And it's important information to know. But that's just another thing that
sounds like Open Door. I may have sent an email to my friend at the FTC because I was like, hey, they removed it. So someone must have told them they might get in trouble for this, but they would show a home and you'd scroll down and on their thing, it would have property history and it would only be like the MLS pulled information. So public record, which is when it shows what they bought it for, was non-existent in the history. So it would look like the home last sold in 2016, but it actually sold 3 months prior to it listing because Open Door bought it off market. But then they wouldn't show their price changes. So on their property history, if it was listed at like 501 and then they deducted 20,000 off on their property history, it would still just show that whatever the price was right now, that's what it would show in the property history. Like it wouldn't even show that they deducted the price. And I'm like, this is so awful. Like if this is your business model, that's fine, but be honest about like the pricing, because you're telling people to start an offer right now, but you're not showing them correct information. Like you're leaving out some very important things that people would look at to make offers. But I didn't know that the time is paused when things go under a contract. I'm sure maybe it's different for every MLS, but I didn't know that. So that's good to know. So you need to look when you're looking at stuff as a home buyer, like look at actually the very first day it was listed, correct? And not necessarily days on market.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how transparent that even is on those public sites or not. But even when I've tried to interact with my MLS and talk to them about things like that and other things, there's a lot of inaccurate data that realtors put in listings, and we can make the MLS know about it, and they're supposed to correct it. And they're pretty good about that. But the entire MLS is owned by the board of realtors. Appraisers are not in the mix, and it's built to accommodate realtors. So if any upset caused to a realtor, that change, regardless of the benefits to the consumer, it won't go through.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's funny. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago on TikTok, how the MLS originally wasn't for the public. It was for broker to broker, sharing information, not to the public, just with other agents. And then once Zillow started to make it public, then people were like, oh, like this is for me. So now there's kind of this two sides going on, like this should be public. Everything should be public. And then there's the past history of NAR and these MLS boards, because you essentially can't be on the MLS unless you're a part of NAR. And I shouldn't say that everywhere, but in most places, they're so intertwined that you can't partake in one without the other. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as these class action lawsuits go on, that if that MLS situation isn't maybe the next thing to have conversations about, if we're looking at transparency and antitrust issues, like my guess would be that would be coming up in conversation. Look at us, we're all off track. I told you that was going to happen. Okay. Why can we not shop around for appraisers? Like we can shop around for title companies and pricing, but we are not allowed to shop around for appraisers. Why?
Technically can, but you become the client of that appraiser. And again, just how everything is set up, if you bring that appraisal to your lender and want them to use that for the loan, they require that they're listed as the client. So at that point, they require another appraisal, and they'll hire how they go through things. So I know it's an expense to buyers or sellers or whomever wants one. It's a great value, in my opinion, to even just get that appraisal, whether you can use it ultimately in your loan or not, because you can use it to negotiate if you are a tough consumer.
Right.
Go up against the people that are holding your hand through the whole process. As far as for the loan, unless you're paying cash, it's set up that way.
Yeah, it's always in the items of like, you cannot shop for these, but you can shop for this. And I'm like, what? Why? So now we know like what we're being charged isn't what you're getting.
Correct.
There's some padding there or something taken off of what you're getting, which I did not know, which I feel like should be disclosed. Like, here's the appraiser fee, here's their fee. But we just get the one lump sum number and think it all goes to you. So that's interesting. I want to know how many other hands are in the cookie jar of the appraisal business. Like who else calls the shots or is able to monetize or benefit outside of the appraiser?
To monetize or benefit, it's tough because hands that are in our pocket financially are AMCs and lenders. And I mean, I would say realtors to a point, because if you don't provide the contract price being the value, you're up against them and you'll likely lose. There's your state board who is who you get turned into if anybody's upset, and I promise you, nobody's upset if you hit the contract price, whether it's a good or bad appraisal. But if I've been turned to the state one time, and I can tell you it was, and I was told by the state investigator that being that I'm a good appraiser, I will definitely wind up back there again. Which is a testament to how rigged.
So they're essentially reporting you because they don't like what you put down in the value of the home.
Correct.
I feel like that's a big waste of the state's time. Although I'll tell you what, every state has their own state commission board, right? Real estate commission board. And I will tell you, my friend Stephen Brobeck, who works with the Consumer Federation of America, did a report not too long ago about how every state commission board is supposed to have consumer seats, and they're supposed to be filled. And how many currently there are states with commission boards with empty consumer seats, or that consumer seat was filled with someone that actually has ties to the industry. And my state is one of them in Pennsylvania. So Mr. Shapiro, I have tried calling you multiple times to ask you how I can get myself onto the consumer seat, because no one at Mr. Shapiro's office answers their phone. But it just sits empty. So I'm like, well, that's a big problem. Like, how are we not included in this reckoning of who's doing good and who's not? You know, how do we not get included in those conversations when you don't even fill the seats that we're supposed to be sitting in? And it was a bunch of states. I don't know about Colorado. I'll have to look. Yeah. But it was interesting to read how we're supposed to have a say, but we're just not there.
Yeah, realtors fill the seats on a lot of boards that have
housing nonprofits. I can think of multiple that I've talked with. And the minute you bring up ideas and action plans, this happened to me twice. One was a giant nonprofit. The minute I brought up tangible things that we could try to do to help home buyers right now compete and not lose out to investors over and over again, it did not cut out realtors, but it just took away maybe some control. And the person in that meeting that was a real estate agent was like, oh, I'll have to think about this. And then I never heard from them again. I was like, go figure. God, I should have known. But there's so many people involved that you just don't realize, you know, and the consumer is not one of them. And we should be, because we're paying for everybody and we're living in these homes and you're advising us. It's just fascinating that we don't have a say. We should, but we don't.
And the education that the public gets is controlled by those big, you know, conglomerates of people that have an agenda for the direction that they want to educate. And for example, I was at a property appraising, and it just so happened that the realtor was there and the buyer. And I was going about my business. It was an FHA appraisal, which that's another entity that has their fingers in our business. But and so I was looking at the back fence, and it was wobbling. So I was just doing this on the fence, just checking it. And the buyer was out in the backyard, and he was checking the fence because he had a dog that wanted to make sure that he couldn't get out. And so I asked him, I said, did you have your inspection done yet? And just making small talk, really. And he said, yeah, and it was pretty good. I said, nothing alarming came out of it, huh? And he said, no. And then he went inside and talked to his agent. And then I went back into the basement and overheard the agent tell their client, don't ever tell the appraiser anything about the home inspection. And I'm muzzled. I can't go up there and correct that line of thought, but it is infuriating, because why wouldn't transparency for your client be beneficial to them ultimately?
Right.
Whether it's good or bad, you are working for your client, correct?
Right.
So, but just there's things like that happening throughout that just keep the consumer in the dark, because they are trusting the professionals around them, and the appraiser is not around them.
Oh, wait. So she said, don't tell your appraiser anything.
Right. And my husband is a home inspector, and I've watched him interact and do his job. And He's an amazing home inspector. And that's a whole nother profession that.
Oh, I know. I did a I did a 2-part with my friend who was a home inspector for like 5 years, and she just put it all out there. I think it was the first season, about the people that loved to hire her because she was so thorough, and the people that avoided her because she was so thorough. And
Right.
the agent in my city who is like extremely popular, has the big billboards, not that equates to
Top
being
2%.
right. That specific agent would ask her to send her the inspection before the buyer gets it so she could edit it. And she's like, no, and please don't call me again. And every time I drive past this lady's billboard, I'm like, man, I wish people knew that she asked to edit home buyers' inspection reports, because I feel like maybe people would be more weary of using her. Oh, it's so frustrating.
You can't, no matter how much regulation or training in any industry, really, you can't train integrity into a person. And that's what they've tried to appear that they are doing with appraisers. The recent blow up about appraiser bias. For example, it is the most easily disproven thing if you use data, whether there was, and I can't imagine. I would love to see an appraisal come across my desk where it was apparent to me that there was some type of racial bias or bias to any degree other than getting the contract price.
Right.
That's the biggest.
Well, I'm sure, just like there was that big thing about realtors being racist,
Was that?
I'm sure there's, oh yeah, it was 2019 in Long Island or Brooklyn or somewhere. And it annihilated like 30 different realtors, and how they were. Yeah. So, I think we'd be dumb not to assume that there isn't a small pocket somewhere of people that perhaps are biased. Not obviously not you. But I think that unfortunately in the world we're in,
there's lack of integrity
everywhere.
And you can, be subject to that. But it is, again, with data, you can prove that wrong very easily. It's not really, embedded or tough to see. I guess is what I'm saying, that if an appraisal was put in front of me, regardless of if it was because of bias or another reason, I can tell if it's wrong or not, low or too high, but
Speaking of wrong, low, or too high, how often is it that an appraisal dead on matches the offer?
So for me, I would say, if you were taking a sampling of the last 6 months, it's been pretty rare, but occasionally it is, fair. And when I go through my appraisal, I'm essentially arguing with myself. Trying to prove to myself why this or that in terms of value is, I have to convince myself of it so that I can illustrate it with data involved. And I guess out of the last handful of appraisals that I did, 2 of them came in right at or above, actually. I was surprised at the one above because it was considerably above. And so, you do have those instances, but in a declining market, it's, if you have an ethical appraiser, it's rare because realtors still want to push for,
what happened last year.
Realtors, appraisers. And to be fair, when things were going up so high back in July, for the first time in my career, I was adjusting up for active and pending listings. Active and pending listings in an appraisal are, the weight that they carry are minimal because they are not sold. So many things can happen between, contract and close. And actives for sure. So, but based on a trending analysis of average list to sale price ratios over the, prior 3 months, let's say, if they show 103%, so that means that people are buying above, the list price to that degree, I will make an upward adjustment to account for that. And the same goes for in the opposite direction. When buyers start, if they start closing at less than the list price, and you can create a trend to illustrate that, then again, that there'll be a negative adjustment. But for the first time last July, I was doing upward adjustments, and it's a rare thing. So I'm betting a lot of appraisers refrained from that just because of how rare it was. But if you let the data speak and you do it based on that, you will get a good reward. But contract price, it can happen. I mean, in an increasing market, I was appraising above contract price a lot.
Oh, really? All right, here's my next question, because I see this a lot, and usually on Reddit, when people are talking about they're getting ready to sell their home and they just put $65,000 into their kitchen, and they think that is going to immediately translate into $65,000 added onto the value of their home, which isn't always the case. And so how do you decipher if I just redid my kitchen and I put in like $80,000, which would be ridiculously insane? How do you figure that out as an appraiser when you go to figure out the value of a home? But you don't even know what they paid, right? You have no idea
not always, and it's not necessary really to know the dollar for dollar amount, because again, you just compare sales to sales of one that has a similarly updated kitchen versus one that does not, and all the other attributes are exactly the same, which never happens, by the way.
Okay.
But with a reasonableness of comparability, and see if consistently buyers are paying whatever dollar amount more for an updated kitchen. That's why investing in, crazy high-end industrial appliances in a mid-grade neighborhood is not good. You're not going to see that money. If it's a new appliance, that's it. That's all you would need. A good example I use, my mom, who worked in the appraisal business for a while, but she was never an appraiser, but she had a hand-painted light fixture that she bought for $10,000.
Wow.
And when they went to sell their house, I said, Mom, you better take that with you, because you're never
not getting it.
that,
Right.
And so it's, but in a, multi-million-dollar custom high-end neighborhood, yes, you don't want to under finish your kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be competitive within your neighborhood. So you don't want to under improve or over improve to a large degree. Obviously you have preferences, and if you're going to live there for a long time,
right, do what you want. Yeah.
So it's never dollar for dollar.
Okay. Yeah. I always found that interesting, because I'm like, it doesn't mean you're getting all that back. Like that equation of what I spent is exactly what I'm going to add. And I'm like, oh, that's not always the case. All right. So what happens if you disagree with the appraisal, which is kind of what happened in this story? So what does a buyer do? Or I know that some agents will fight tooth and nail to get like a reappraisal or a second one, but like, what's the status? Like, what's the deal? How do you challenge that?
The process that's in place right now, it's called an ROV, reconsideration of value request.
Okay.
So you provide either other comps that you think are more similar, or errors in the appraisal that might have contributed to the value, and you submit that via your lender. The lender goes to the AMC. The AMC, gives it to me in their own wording as it goes, at the game of telephone. And the appraiser response. Now, just like any other human, appraisers have pride, and that's a tough one as well. And I've eaten humble pie, and again, it just comes down to integrity. Because one time I had a homeowner, not the realtor, which is usually who is inciting all of
pushing
this.
It, right?
And they usually push sales that have no comparability whatsoever, are 500 square feet larger, all these things, but the price is there. So, and so you just respond, and it's a hassle and a half for an appraiser, especially when their value was accurate. Because as neighborhoods progress and gentrification happens and different things, two neighborhoods that were before similar could be different as far as demanding pricing in a different market climate. So in this case, there was a highway in between these two neighborhoods, which in the past were similarly priced. She said that there's now a difference. So I went back, did data comparisons, and she was right. So it didn't change the value a whole lot, but giving that person that, I have no problem doing that, because humans are, flawed, and we don't have a lot of the data, or we can, there's just ways that you can miss stuff for sure. So appraisers should be open to that. But what happens is it's more likely that realtors are just trying to close the deal and get that contract price. They get their buyers and sellers riled up emotionally, and you're gonna just be hell-bent on destroying the appraiser.
Right.
So they send in an ROV, and then when that doesn't work, they complain to the AMC about the appraiser, and then the AMC gives them the option to get into their appraisal. And then they do that, and as that evolves or devolves, appraisers who just hit the number get the business.
Oh, so the more that people challenge your number, the less likely you'll be contacted.
Correct.
Even if you're right on your value.
Right.
Well, yeah, that sounds incredibly fair. I guess. Oh my God. Oh, this industry. I just can't. I don't get it.
I genuinely love what I do. And I'm very naturally analytical minded. And so it's fun for me to problem solve and see, what everything comes down to. I'll give myself a guess at it before I go out to the property, and then that compared to what I actually come down to after the analytical process. But the industry itself has destroyed the integrity of our profession,
right?
And it's hurting the consumers ultimately. But we have no voice to help the consumers. And to be fair, if I was buying a home, I just wanted to go through, So it's a catch-22 in terms of that. But
it's hard. I feel like we should look at buying a home or selling a home as a business transaction. But we can't. It's so emotional and so emotionally charged, and it's so run on feelings. I feel like this is the perfect home for us. And then you get like slammed with like, oh, this bad inspection report. It doesn't hit the value that you're willing to pay for it. And then you're like just distraught, right? When realistically, we need to do better ourselves as consumers to pay attention to what's going on and look at ourselves. Like we're certainly not appraisers, but I think that we can be smart enough to go online and be like, what are other homes selling for? Like, does this sound right? Like, am I being guided correctly by my real estate agent? Like, should I reach out to an appraiser?
When you don't know the concessions in a concession-driven market, that's tough to even see. But if you're wanting to judge an appraisal that you get as a consumer through the ROV process, or just looking at it yourself, a better way that I don't see come through much. Sometimes ROVs come through, and I say to myself, I could have fought this appraisal better than they did. because is to look at the comps that the appraiser used and ask yourself why those are wrong, rather than providing them other sales first, because discrediting the ones that they used is just a more effective path to get that, because you have to discredit them ultimately, or they're going to use any others.
It's interesting. Like this whole time we're talking, I keep thinking like, and I talked to a lender about this the other day. After 2008, I feel like there was incredible shift and change in regulation of lenders, appraisers, but not in real estate agents. Like I feel like not as much changed, and not as much oversight was put on that side of the table, but it all came down on the lending side. And it's interesting because it all works together. So I find it fascinating that it's in a position where it is now, where you have to advocate for change because things that were supposed to be put in place to help aren't actually doing the job.
Right. And quite the opposite. They're hindering the whole process. And realtors, the NAR, it's a heavy hand. They feed the lenders. They feed, the AMCs. So they don't want to make agents bad.
Right. I think it's the biggest. It used to be the second biggest lobbying group in the US, but last year it was the biggest.
Really?
87. I'll go look. I'll have to look the number up. But they were the biggest lobbying group last year, which is usually they're under the Chamber of Commerce, but I guess last year they bumped themselves up. God, they're going to send me a letter. I know. But sometimes when I check the mail, I'm like, who's going to be the first one to tell me to shut up for all the stuff we talk about online?
They are a huge, huge force, and credit to them for building such a such a massive beast of a group. And there are good agents.
Absolutely. And there's a ton of them on TikTok that I have become friends with that I have had full conversations with. And I'm like, man, if I wanted to use an agent, I would totally use that person. But it's interesting because they're just as mad about how this industry is working right now, but they can't say anything about it. Like I get the messages. Yeah. They're not
an agent.
They're not allowed to say anything negative about another agent. Like you can't use their name. Like you can't say anything negative. And then my one friend who was an agent that I did an interview with, and we talked about the issue of like the quality of real estate agents. And he said 20% are actually, I think, really, really good at their job. And a week later, the local association told him to retract his statement and to put it out there that he was incorrect. And he's like, I'm not doing that because I think we have a problem. Here's where I think we can address these problems. Here's where I think we can help it. Nope, didn't want any of that. So he had to get a lawyer involved.
Oh my goodness.
And he was like, he didn't say anything against their code of ethics, but it wasn't rosy and it wasn't positive. So they told him to retract it and he didn't. It's still out there. I didn't delete it. And he actually left the association because of it. It's interesting that there's this giant lobbying group to protect the agents, and to a degree they get involved in lobbying for some stuff for consumers, but their main benefit is they're a trade association. Like they're there to protect themselves. So I look at it like, well, who protects us? Like who protects consumers? You have the DOJ and you have the FTC, but
the appraisers are really supposed to.
Yeah.
And so ideally, assuming the appraiser has good ethics and integrity and is doing their job and competent, you get that low appraisal, you're supposed to go back to the negotiating table to negotiate down.
Right.
And that just doesn't happen anymore. And I saw it, in fact, happen more often before 2008.
Really?
Yeah, because, and granted, there was a lot of appraisers contributed to that whole problem as well. Bad appraisers. My stepfather being one of them.
That's okay.
But after the induction of AMCs and, it just destroyed the appraiser's ability to build personable relationships with their clients. I am just a number. My quality of work is not only, they're unaware of how to even judge quality. And they don't care. Everyone just reads the bottom number on the appraisal report. And again, I spent 8 to 10 hours, from start to finish on these reports and regrid comps, several times. We're on the phones with realtors who don't want to give us information, trying to verify what's a good sale, what's a credible source, and companies like Open Door who have embedded their names in every little, you have to, there's a lot of an analysis. And for someone to just go on Zillow and be guided by an agent who's driven by commission,
right?
It's, I don't know how, unless you have an appraiser friend, how you could get through that and get a good deal, I guess, is, you can define that in different ways, but
right,
fair, accurate assessment of your property.
Right. Which reminds me that the buyer that we talked about, whose home was on the market for 120 days and appraised 100,000 under what they were going to offer. So I guess they went to submit, what did you call it? The ROV? They went to submit for an ROV. And before they could do that, the seller countered with 8K over the appraised value, and they agreed. So I'm pretty sure the seller knew that, like, that probably wasn't going to, I think he knows the actual value of his home.
Why they didn't want to try their luck at a second appraisal, because most people, it's like a lottery. We might as well try it,
Right. But then
that's probably good, whoever was involved.
Right. Unless the value would come down a ton to a more realistic price rather than 100K over.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. He probably rolled the dice. Like, what if the second one comes back at an actual value? Let's just get 8K more and call it a day, which is, oh, I need like I feel like everyone should have like a home inspector and appraiser on speed dial to be like, what do you think about this home? I know you can't, but.
You know, what's funny is I thought if MLS was made available to the public, I could let my license go, which would mean I wasn't subject to all of the BS that is involved with that. And I could service the community freely if I have, because I, at that point, would be the public and could access the MLS and give whatever information, whatever opinion I wanted, because I wasn't licensed anymore. But because I'm licensed, I am muzzled.
Right. It's fascinating. But I mean, look at it. Even the MLS, it took how many years plus the DOJ to make buyer agent commission public on the website? And that was like, what, 2 years, 2020, 2021. So it took that long to get them to even just show what commission is being offered so that consumers know if they're getting pushed to 3% homes instead of to the 2% homes, or like your agent doesn't want to show you that home. And then you can see, oh, they're offering 1%. Is that why? But it took that much effort to get that. I can't fathom the battle that would be for a public MLS.
Yeah. But I don't think it would. I don't think it. The more boards I sit on at meetings and webinars I go to about what's going on and how to, use PAP is another thing that needs to be. I'm not sure what backlash I will get for saying this, but it's written by attorneys, in all legal language, and it's not to benefit the appraiser or empower the appraiser or anything, but it is a 360 some page book of what states can nickel and dime an appraiser's report for, even if the value's right, and ruin their career based on that. And it's so, for example, an appraiser cannot give anybody a copy of the appraisal report. A lender can, a realtor can, a buyer can. You can share that all day long. But if you called me and asked me for your appraisal on your own house, I can't. Not only can I not give you that, I can't talk about it.
Why?
It belongs to the client, the named client in the report, and which is likely the lender, and they have total control over it. And so it's that's just one of many things. So there's intended use, intended users. There's so many little things that whenever I sit in on any kind of proposed changes to this book, it's just a never-ending hindrance to what we are trying to do. And that's another and if you're an appraiser and you speak bad about USPAP, you're going to be in trouble at some point.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it should be burned, and that would relieve a lot of pressure that the appraiser has that does no good for the consumer. It's not to protect the consumers, it's to muzzle us further and to give the other entities, the big GSE companies, Fannie, Freddie, all the companies, including FHA and HUD, power to manipulate to their advantage. And it's really, really frustrating as an appraiser, because again, I see senior citizens that come in to, when I do serve as a hearing officer for counties, the biggest lacking that they have in presenting their case is simply understanding the appraisal process. So it's so misleading to them. And again, when your property is assessed by the county, it's a whole different animal. It's mass appraisal. They're 2 years behind the current market. But if consumers were empowered just in knowing how that works, they could have negotiating power when they come to appeal their property values. So there's so many aspects that just the education would help consumers. But again, appraisers will not speak out about stuff like that.
Right. And it's interesting. It's hard because I feel like the people that do get in trouble And it's the same thing for real estate agents. The ones that speak out get in trouble, and then nothing ever changes. And so the rest of them are like, well, I'm just going to put my head down and keep working because I don't want to lose my job. But then nothing changes. And I think that's why I enjoy doing this, because I'm not in any of those groups. So I'm allowed to talk about this stuff, and people will send me stuff because they can't say anything. Like I had someone send me something today about a referral fee platform that was using her picture and all her information and telling people to contact her. But then that information would go to the referral platform, and she didn't know she was on this website. And then the referral platform emailed her and said, we have a lead for you. Like, would you like it? It'll be X percentage. And she's like, it's all junk. I never open those. And so this person that actually filled out the form called her and was like, hey, I sent you an email through blankblank.com and you never got back to me. And she's like, that goes to the company. And because I don't want to pay them for your data, they never connected you with me. And she didn't know that, and it's just, it's just disgusting. I'm encouraged that, people like you or, the discussions that everybody has, like if more consumers understood what's not working for them, that we could encourage more change, and be louder in numbers. So if two things, I did want to ask you, if I get an appraisal, what should I be looking at as a home buyer for flaws, or what's the key things to focus on?
Well, if you have knowledge about the state of your market, whether it's increasing, declining, or if it's, right now, a lot of the neighborhoods around here are within the past 3 months starting to just stabilize.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that, I'm not sure how a consumer can fully know that in a shifting market.
Right. Well, their agents should be able to.
Yeah, hopefully, because when during the declining market, they won't call it declining; they will call it,
correction,
or something. But if you know that, that's a big help. But looking at the grid page where the sales are listed,
okay,
and seeing similarities. A big difference between realtors and appraisers in terms of looking at data. Realtors are selling it. So they take the total square footage, basement and above grade square footage, and they run a lot of their searches and base a lot of their stuff on that comparison. Whereas, and it varies with market to market, of course. Generally speaking, where I'm at, GLA above grade square footage is a higher pricing than basement square footage. And so it's considered, and on any appraisal, it is considered separate on separate lines in the appraisal. So just compare apples to apples. GLA, gross living area, which is above grade square footage, to GLA on the comps. And if those are similar, and when I say similar, on a home that's got 1,900 square feet for GLA, that would be about 150 square foot difference. That's fairly similar.
Okay.
There could be an adjustment there, despite that, but it's a reasonable comp, likely.
Okay.
But an age of construction, and sometimes age of construction doesn't matter because there wasn't a lot of changes in construction quality or floor plans, things like that. I just recently appraised a home, and I don't normally see a lot of drastic age differences. Yes, but within 10 to 15 years, a lot of times there's not a lot of apparent price difference, but just for age. But in this case, during that time shift, and it was only about 7 years, there was a big shift in the floor plans, similar sizes and everything else was apples to apples, but there was just an obvious different appeal that the buyers were consistently paying more for. Okay. So I had an adjustment for that. So it really depends on, out of state buyers I feel for because, they're just not aware of those little nuances. Mm-hmm. Talking to an appraiser, if you get an appraisal and you're wondering about it, call another appraiser. They can, a lot of them will be willing, but
yeah, they want to get.
There are some things you can talk about and say, those don't look like they're very similar. Granted, maybe similar homes haven't sold recently there and they were forced to use that. But it's there's a lot of evidence, just understanding the appraisal process. And so what is apples to apples? You know, I mean, I had an agent do an ROV and provided comps where even the pictures of the exterior of the home, any person on the planet could see that those were not the same thing at all, you know, but similar square footage. So technically, you know, that's a similarity and different things like that. And so I just copied and pasted the two photos, you know, to try and illustrate how obviously different they are.
Yeah, these are not the same.
Yeah. So common sense, really.
All right. The one thing I did want to ask is new construction pricing. I see a lot of buyers that were like, somehow the appraisal always just matched the value. And I'm like, how does that work to price new construction? Do you get a lot of those, or did those?
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that's really case by case. That yes, you've got an on-site sales agent a lot of times that you're dealing with for access to the property.
Okay.
Regardless if they're, you know, actively involved in that particular deal, but they are to some degree. They're representing the community of that development. But so you're getting access. A lot of times they're not 100% finished with the construction when you go out, and so you'll end up interacting with them, and they try to push you during that time too. But I mean, again, it comes down to integrity. A lot of times in a good market, I mean, builders are, it's funny. I saw a lot of ups and downs with builder pricing over this last, you know, chaotic 2 years, I guess. Whereas initially, you know, jump on those new construction, they're giving you a better deal. But towards the end, they're dumping their properties because they can't sell them. So they're offering standard $15,000 incentives, but they're pricing their homes looking like they're wanting it to appraise at this high price, but every price they have is already docked $15,000. And so appraisers should be adjusting for that. But then when they pull that in, they'll say, well, all these homes are priced at this higher price point. But it, again, can be manipulated. So,
right. All right. So to wrap this up, what would be the one major change you would like to see in the appraisal industry? I know there are many, but the biggest, like I got like a whole page of changes I would like. So just your top one, that would be
the elimination of AMCs. That hindered the interaction and the fluid communication from appraiser down to the consumer significantly. And it's, you know, takes some money out of the appraiser's pocket too. So
right.
That would probably be a good start.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for this. Have a story or a question you want to share? Hit us up at therealestatereplay.com.